Welcome to Solo Pro Radio. It's the only resource for self-employed professionals to grow their business. I'm Barbara Saunders, the Solo Pro Success Coach, and it's my mission to help brilliant creative solo pros go from floundering to flourishing. And I do that as the director of the International Association of Self-Employed Communication Professionals and as the founder of the Solo Pro Academy, where I have programs focused specifically on helping solo pros build a profitable, custom-fit business. Swing on by soloprosuccess.com and pick up your free Income Accelerator Success Kit. If you'd like to join us, zip over to Solo Pro Radio on Facebook and like our page. You'll be able to ask questions, get to know our co-hosts, and find resources to help you connect and grow. I'm thrilled today to welcome my guest, George Plumley. He's the author of 100 Questions to Ask Before Building Your Website. George is a virtual consultant for small business owners to make sure they plan or remake their websites effectively without wasting time or money. George has had a broadcast training at Conestoga College, and he has worked at several radio stations doing news reporting, hosting, and interviewing. He has a double MA in philosophy, and he's taught at York University, Washington University, and Rutgers University. He's been an instructor at the Vancouver Film School, and for several years he's conducted public workshops in the voiceover industry. George's business, Brave New Niche Media Coaching, specializes in helping you find your key message and publicly presenting it in an engaging way. Through inspiring one-on-one coaching and dynamic workshops, he works to make the most of your media opportunities. He does coaching around presenting and making the most of media as well as website development. George helps solo pros navigate the online business world, including taking your website mobile and how to make the best use of your mailing lists. Welcome, George.
Thanks very much, Barbara. I always love introductions because you hear yourself so differently when you're it's like, oh, is that me? I do. Oh, I do that. Cool. It's priceless. Thank you so much for having me on today because I think it is so important that we all share this information, especially when we are solo individual people. It's we need our group meetings, don't we?
Very much. It's always been my motto that the rising tide lifts all boats, and it's our job to raise those tides.
I agree.
So, yeah, I've been thrilled. I've been digging through all your websites. You have quite a few with your books and things. And I love what you've got going on. I've believed for a very long time, I actually have 3 businesses that I run, that the internet is just absolutely the best tool for solo pros.
It's absolutely amazing. It makes you at the same level as all the big players. And I think that's even more true now than it was even 4 or 5 years ago because of the tools that we've got. I'll just give you one quick example because you mentioned mailing lists in the intro there, and I'm doing a lot of work with that right now. The things you can do with a mailing list would have cost you, well, you wouldn't have been able to do it 5 years ago.
Definitely.
It would have been so costly. The technology was not there to do it on your own. And now you can fine-grained get to exactly the right people with exactly the right message, which, of course, increases the chances that they're going to respond. Right?
And they can just click a link and pay.
What's that? Sorry?
How cool that they can just click a link and pay right there and then.
Oh, exactly.
Talking about
it takes
technology.
That whole. Well, I'm using. I use FreshBooks now for my accounting, which is the online. There's a lot of different ones out there, and what a difference that makes. You know, the headaches of keeping track of all of that, and the integration. In fact, speaking of mailing lists, I took all of my names in FreshBooks. There's one button. It imported them all into my mailing list manager. So these 2 websites talk to one another, which then talk to my website, and the integration is now absolutely phenomenal. And all of that is integrated with social media because as soon as you send out your mailing list message, it automatically gets sent to all your social media. So we really, I think, are hitting the point where true solo entrepreneurship online is possible. in the
so
fullest
exciting.
sense. It is.
That is so exciting. When I first started, my original business is publishing services. I'm a publication designer,
right,
by trade, or whatever I guess you'd say. And my original business, I had to get work out in Europe because there was no work in the Northwest. That was 10 years ago, and the internet made that so possible. So I tell my people, you can work where the money is.
When I first started, my original, and that's the name I sort of use in general, is Brave New Niche.
I love it.
And years ago, I had the vision, this was back in 1993, I had this vision of, I was doing audiobooks, is what I was trying to do.
Okay.
And I knew there were only maybe 10,000 people in the whole world who would ever want to hear my audiobooks because they're pretty unusual. I was doing funny ghost stories. Well, how many people really want to hear that? Well, those 10,000 do. And how can I reach them? And the internet, it struck me that this was the tool that was going to allow me to find them. But it's taken, I must say, it's taken until now to really make it fully possible when we talk about niche marketing. In fact, it's getting to the point now where I actually do a talk now called Niche Your Niche. So, those are my 10,000 ghost story people, okay? But within those 10,000 ghost people, I've got some who've bought from me before, some who haven't. Some are a certain age. So some are younger, some are older. I can then speak to each of those niches individually as well, because they each need a different message. And so this ability to hone in and find who you need on the internet now, there's a blog for absolutely everything, right?
That's
I'm sure
true.
Probably somebody's got a humorous ghost story blog somewhere that I could pitch my funny ghost stories to, So that... Yeah, it's like you watch these shows about the future, right?
Right.
Well, the show we watched 10 years ago is now coming true. Basically, the plans we had and the visions we had are really now coming to fruition, and that's what's so exciting.
That is exciting. Well, and I think it takes, I just got a fun email from a friend today who reads all of these great newsletters, and then she sends me snippets. And one of the things she said was that it's the people who kind of watch the science fiction shows and read the science fiction books that are coming up with our new technology in a way.
Yes.
I thought that was a fascinating quote now that you brought that up.
It's very, I was just watching, there was a documentary narrated by William Shatner talking about the influence of Star Trek on culture. And exactly what you just said, there's a whole generation that's grown up on these things with a promise in the science fiction, and they've worked hard to make it come true, like in medicine, in aerospace technology, in computing, all of these areas. It's really exciting, because that's everything has to start with a dream, right?
Well,
and that's
I totally believe it. I think our cell phones are just a manifestation of the old communicators on.
Exactly. You know what? I didn't have. I'm one of the last people to go mobile because I sit at home like I am doing right now, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I don't go anywhere. I never needed a cell phone. But you know what? I've got a super phone now. I still don't make any phone calls on it, but it does everything for me. It's my calendar. I listen to old-time radio shows on it. It tunes my daughter's ukulele. It is the tricorder. It's the communicator sitting there
How
for me.
Funny. I knew I liked you, George.
We're gonna. What's your favorite Star Trek episode? No, don't get us started.
It's you guys got to be the Tribbles, right?
Yeah, of course the Tribbles. Of course, I showed that to my daughters, and they thought that was. And of course, the Tribbles. If anyone out there knows Club Penguin, which is one of the hot Disney kid properties these days. On Club Penguin, what are the names of those little creatures? Oh, I forget the names of them now, but they look like, I said those are Tribbles, kids. You don't understand. Tribbles with bigger eyes. I mean, so we had fun with that. But, that's a really interesting example, actually, Club Penguin. Look at that, how the kids nowadays, they're used to living online.
It's true.
The other thing we have to remember is there are, the younger generation is our future customers. And so as professionals, we need to be aware of how savvy they are about working online. And for them, there's no yellow pages sitting on a table. There's no. They don't do any of that stuff. They work through online. And so we have to make sure that we're, one of the things that we wanted to talk about today, and I think is so crucial, is why have a website?
Oh, yes.
A website is the hub of everything you do, and that's where they're going to find you. That's where people nowadays are going to locate you. So it is your Yellow Pages listing. At its very minimum, get a page up there. I don't care. If you have nothing else, put a page up. And
that's a great point.
And the really crucial thing about that page, if it's just one page you've got, hopefully you'll get more, but that one page is absolutely yours. And that's why it's so important to have your own website. Where was Facebook 5 years ago?
I don't think it was.
It was literally, I think it was 2003, I was researching the other day that it actually physically started, but even then it was nowhere until 4 or 5 years ago.
You're right.
Culturally. So if you put all your eggs in the Facebook basket, I people say this, oh, you don't need a website, just do a Facebook fan page. Well, that's nice right now.
But look how fast they change Facebook. It's a little annoying, actually.
Well, yes. So you don't control, like some people don't like the timeline. They don't like the way things are going. But you have no control. That's not your property. Right. It's their property in that sense. So I always say to people, get your own website and do not get it on, and I just converted a site the other day from Weebly. I don't mean to single out Weebly, but there's many, many of these site builder systems. They're great, except someone else controls them.
Somebody else owns it. I love that you brought that up, George, because that's a big key that I teach in the Solo Pro Academy is that, when you're in the job market, somebody else has control over your life, over your career. They decide if they hire you. They decide what they pay you. They decide when you show up, what you wear, where you sit. When you take the reins of your own business, and really step into that CEO role. And I think very much what you're talking about, owning your own website. You are in control of your universe. I think that's so powerful. We didn't talk about it yet, but I do WordPress websites. Yes, you do.
That's my other book that I wrote was on WordPress. Now, I always say to people, don't use WordPress.com, which is a hosted version of WordPress. Use the self-hosted version of WordPress because, again, WordPress.com is their platform. They determine what plugins, what functionality there is. They determine if you're doing a personal blog, fine, it's great. But you know what? If you're in business, what does hosting cost you? $5, $6, $7 a month?
Yeah,
plus,
it's pretty ridiculous.
A domain name. My gosh, if you can't swing that, you shouldn't be in business anyway. So get your own website, which you can move. So I've done this actually with several clients recently. They had a lot of trouble with a couple of hosts that were really slow. Boom. Took us about a day, totally moved their site to another host. You're in control, and it's absolutely crucial. And by the way, one quick tip for everybody out there, go and check if you own your own domain name. Now, the reason I say that is a lot of people hire web developers and designers, and they sort of say, well, go do this for me.
That's an important point.
They put it in their name. If that domain name is in their name, they control it. And now, hopefully they're good and they'll transfer it over to you. But I have had, and I can't tell you how many situations I've had with clients coming to me, and I discovered that someone else, either business partner or somebody, even an employee. I had one time an employee had registered it in their name. The company didn't actually own their own domain name.
Isn't that scary?
It's very scary.
I've even seen where, they leave the other person has the files even. If you have someone doing your site, they actually keep the files of your
very
site.
Very much so. Yes. Yeah. So you
that's
need
scary.
Everything, copies of everything, and be in control. So,
well, let me ask you, and I love WordPress. I put my sites, I actually have membership sites and everything I run on WordPress.
Oh, good.
But let me ask you, this came up just recently. The whole Joomla dragon is raising its head again. I actually have some web design and web programming background, so I tried Joomla a couple years ago and nearly killed myself. So I'm not a fan. So tell me about, what is your opinion about the difference between Joomla and WordPress? And it's okay to be opinionated because I am.
Yeah, no, it's and I saw a really great post by somebody over Christmas in which they said, look, let's stop slagging each other off. Joomla has actually some very good article management facilities.
Okay.
Joomla has some great, we call them plugins or modules or add-ons, because most of these systems are bare. They're bare core functions. Then you add on what you need, which is a very good way to do things. Because I always say to people, you need bells, I need whistles. Don't build me something with all the bells and whistles, because you and I don't need everything I
love the modular plugin.
Very, very handy. So the thing for me with Joomla is I don't find, and my clients haven't found, because I have tried it, they don't find it as easy to use as WordPress. And that really, to me, especially for small businesses who don't need, say, Drupal, which is a much more bigger, it's a real programmer's program.
Right.
If you've got a big organization and certain kinds of functionalities, it could be a better choice than WordPress potentially. Mm-hmm. So, but for the average person on the web today, the average small business, WordPress is plenty. In fact, it's more than you need in one sense. It's more, the possibilities are more than you need. The core, I know people who have like 2 plugins. That's all they got. That's all they need. One to back it up, one for SEO, and you're done. Other people have 40 plugins because they've got a lot of different things they want to do. But the other factor with WordPress is there's just a lot more people working with it.
That's true.
So,
That's true.
I always say to my clients, if I drop off the face of the earth, there's 20 other people in this town who can do just as good a job as I'm doing. And so you're never stuck. Again, that sense. My whole mantra is future proofing. You want to make yourself.
I like that word.
As possible. It's so important because that's where we waste the time and the money, is redoing things.
Yeah.
Let's not rebuild. And that's the purpose of systems like WordPress and Joomla and so forth is you never touch the content, you just change the look of the site. You don't touch the content, you just add on a new module as you need things. So in that sense, you're future-proofed. And part of the future-proofing is 5 years from now, will anyone remember how to run Drupal? Hopefully they will, but there aren't that many people that know. In WordPress, even if WordPress stopped doing anything today, there are so many people out there who know how to run it, who would probably take it over and do a new version of it, which is Joomla is a version of Mambo, which was a content management system. Some people disagreed on the direction it was going, so they took it over and called it Joomla. WordPress originally was one called B2 Evo. I can't remember the exact name, but Matt Mullenweg took over the code because that person wasn't doing it anymore.
Right.
And made a new, so it'll all morph. That's the future proofing that we want.
That's the beauty of open source, too, is that there's so many people interested and engaged.
Yes.
That it's going to evolve.
Makes it so easy to move forward and keep up with everything. Mm-hmm. The classic example I remember was I had a client who was using one of these site builder programs that every host offers them nowadays. And Facebook came out with like buttons. This was a couple of years ago. And it was 3 months later before the site builder program put in a functionality that allowed you to put on like buttons. So you were at their mercy. On WordPress, within days of Facebook bringing this out, within days, there were 3 plugins available. There's over 20 now. So you instantly had access to new functionality. Google Plus comes out. Boom. Somebody builds a plugin that it makes it easy to integrate it in your site. So anyway,
I think it's so funny. You're exactly right. There's so much happening on this end of business that sometimes it can become almost a little bit of a distraction, from what you actually do.
It's like when desktop publishing first started, and everybody started doing their own brochures and their own business cards. And then you start to realize it takes a heck of a lot of money and time and energy to do this yourself. More the knowledge and learning and all of that. Mm-hmm. And I think we're that way with the web. And one of the things that WordPress is doing for people is allowing you to step back and focus on the actually important part of all of this, which is your content and your interaction with your visitors.
That's a great point. And I love most of my members and the people I teach are actually content creators. Their intellectual property is where their businesses are. And what I love, I don't mean to make this a big commercial about WordPress, but it just makes it accessible and very easy and usable. And so I do appreciate that. And I love that you brought into the conversation, getting it to work with all the social media that's out there, that's going on. It's so important, and one of the things that I really love that you've got going on is that you don't really just focus on the website. You really kind of bring the whole presence overall.
Yes, it is so important because it needs to be integrated with a plan for marketing yourself, a plan for communicating with others, and developing a community around your business, your services, and your products. Yes, you really, and the beauty is you can take that overview because it's easy to do the integration nowadays. You can do a lot of it yourself, or at least be knowledgeable enough, and that's really what my book, 100 Questions to Ask Before Building a Website, is all about. Be knowledgeable enough to talk to the people you hire to make sure they're doing it right, that they're meeting your goals, and that you're understanding what it is they're doing, even if you don't necessarily want to do it
right
from a technical standpoint, get things set up, but you want to know how it's functioning in terms of, if I create this blog post, will I be able to immediately tweet it and send a Facebook post and do all these extra social media things, but someone else may be doing the technical end of it for you.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. But I love that it's 100 questions to ask before you build a website. Let's talk a little bit about that book. I love that you kind of go into, think this through before you jump in.
Yes.
I've noticed a lot of people coming at business now are so scared of the internet because of, identity theft and, I'm going to get spammed and all of this stuff. Talk a little bit about that. How can we, allay their fears on that?
Yes, I think there's a number of different fears. Let me address the security one first with a really, really simple answer. It's scary how simple it is in one sense. Have a really strong password. You'll find
that's a good point.
And it sounds so simple, but it really is when you look at the statistics of how people hack into things. 80% of them are based on password. Then there's other technical issues and so forth. But if you're using software like a WordPress, there are other people are looking out for those technical security issues. The really important technical security issue is that you're not using the word password as your password. The little things like that. And my clients always get mad at me because I make such horribly devious, mean passwords for them. But I say to them, seriously, you gotta keep it. Don't change it. To the name of your dog and your birth date. Anything that's natural language, and by that we mean could be looked up in a dictionary or is made up of common sounds.
Right.
It doesn't even have to be in the dictionary. Literally, if it follows linguistic patterns of any sort, boom, you're easily broken. Now, not everybody's trying to get into your site, of course,
right.
But you'd be amazed how many people. I had a friend of mine show me a piece of software one time that monitored all the attempts to get into a server.
Really?
And it was fascinating because it did it visually, and it literally looked like the Earth being bombarded with matter from space, which it is constantly. Now, we never see them. They never make it through the atmosphere except the meteorites. So we don't notice that they're there. And you think the meteorite is a breach of security, for example, if you think of it that way.
Right.
All these other ones are attempted breaches. And it is quite startling how many robots are running around there trying to get into your servers. And the number one way they get in is bad passwords.
Cracking your password. Interesting.
Cracking your password. So if you can do that on anything, I'm not just for your website, but anything that you're on. And that includes, again, people get a bit blasé. Well, it's just my Facebook page or it's just my LinkedIn. But you know what? That's you. Talk about identity theft.
Yeah,
I mean, that's where, somebody can get in and post something that you don't want. And, we hear about these stories, people breaking in to celebrities and so forth. But it can happen the other way too. And so just being aware. And the other element I would say on there too is, especially on social media, we let our guard down and we say things that, aside from don't say things that are alienating people and being stupid, but also don't say things that give you a sense of, my business is going to be closed from this date to this date.
So come on in,
and I'm not going to be around the house then. And just
we're going to leave the back door open.
Yeah, very much so. But it's easy.
Good
we get
point.
into this, we want to be friendly and we want to be relaxed and you just have to be careful.
Being mindful, I think that's a great point. You need to remember that you're in public now. Almost everything we do is in public now, so we need to be putting on not only our best face and maybe some clean clothes, but thinking about that. That's a great point.
Yeah.
And it's so simple, isn't it? Your password.
It is. It's very simple, very easy thing, and something we're dealing with every day. The other thing that I would say that sort of scares people about technology is overwhelm.
Oh my gosh! Yes.
Oh, that sense of someone's getting ready to build a website or they're getting ready to revamp an older website, and they're just like, "What'll I do?" The very number one thing to do is sit down and say, "What do I need it to do?"
Right.
And this actually applies to any kind of software that you're getting. We're always inundated with new software, new programs.
Right.
Is to stop and say, what do I need out of this?
You don't really need to know the entire program. You just need to know, what do I need to do? Yeah. Great.
I always say to people with Microsoft Word, how much of that program do you really know? And how much do you really actually need? And it's probably even less than the 20-80 rule. 20% of the stuff we use 80% of the time. It's probably more like 5% with Word. But, we type a letter. Who cares that it does tables and formatting and all this stuff? So then you can step back and not be overwhelmed because you're focused on. Here's a quick example. WordPress has over 17,000 plugins available for it.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
There's overwhelm for you. But you know what? There's probably only 5, I would say, that everybody needs for the average website. There's probably only about 5 of them that you really ought to have. one for social media, one for search engine optimization, one to back up. But those are all functions. If you sat down and said, what do I need my site to do? Those are all functions you would want. So approach it from your needs, not what's out there on the market, because I get overwhelmed with what's possible when I stop and think about it. Or I'm writing, right now I'm in the middle of doing a video course about these same issues as in the book, building a website. And in this video course, of course, I'm trying to consolidate information for people. Well, I get overwhelmed. I was like, oh my gosh, how do I explain this quickly? And then finally you find the way in. But if I was the average person approaching this, trying to sort it out, it is very overwhelming. So
that's a great point. It really gets down into focus. Let me remind our listeners that you're listening to Solo Pro Radio on the Women for Women Network. I'm your host, Barbara, the Solo Pro Success Coach, and we're talking today with George Plumley of BraveNewNiche.com. And I want to jump in. I'm really just enthralled. This is one of my I can really geek out on WordPress and plugins. So, but I wanted to get into, your media coaching, and, the website is so important. It's kind of like your home base. And let's talk a little bit about, coordinating that with all the other stuff out there to create your online presence. I also wanted to talk a little bit about, you talk about key messaging. And I think that's so important. These are tools, but your messaging is what comes from you. So let's shift into that for a second.
How is this for a smooth transition? Watch this, Barbara. Hang on.
You're a pro.
All right. When you're writing for your website, the number one thing you need to do is focus.
Focus.
Every single page has to have one idea and one idea only.
Such a great point. I love that you brought that up.
Not talking about home pages, of course, but any other page. That's exactly what you need to do when you are talking to anyone, media or whoever it is, because that focus is, we're listening on the radio, say, for example, to Solo Pro Radio. We need simple, clear messages to take away. That's what we need as listeners or viewers or readers. And so if you can provide that, two things happen. One is the media loves you, whether it's a blogger or the New York Times, whoever it is. They want people who can give this clear, simple information.
Great point.
Then they'll be more likely to ask you back or mention it. Believe me, the media talk to one another, and this includes bloggers. Oh, I just had a great interview with so-and-so. And so the other person goes, oh, not to mention the fact that, every other radio station and newspaper is reading the New York Times to find out what they should be doing. The more you can come across well, the more the listeners respond to you really well, which is what the media want, right? They want interaction. They want listeners. They want happy listeners. So you make them happy by giving them messages they can take away, and not just messages, but helpful messages. So, for example, I wanted to make sure today that I mentioned about passwords, that I mentioned about taking control of your site. These are things that people can take away and actually do, right? And so my goal in that is to be helpful and be clear. If you can do that, you become a really good guest. And you know what's great about focus? It's really the biggest source of confidence. I do a lot of work with presentation coaching as well. And you know why we're nervous? Because we don't really know what it is we want to say.
That is such a brilliant point. I'm constantly getting my people to think of themselves as experts. And that's how you do it, is you focus on that one thing. That's a brilliant point.
Exactly. Because it's very easy as an expert. Because you're an expert, you see a lot. You see the individual trees. Yeah. You have to be an expert who can stand back and also see the forest as well, because then you can communicate more clearly. I think it was Einstein that was saying that to make something simple, you have to really understand it in detail. But it doesn't follow that understanding things in detail means you can communicate it simply. So the more you can work on that and reduce, like when I go and do a 1.5 hour workshop, my card that I have sitting on the table in front of me has maybe 5 points on it.
Right.
With a couple of subpoints possibly, depending on the talk. But those are triggers. So I've boiled it down to this simplicity. And when you go on the radio, say, especially live stuff's particularly, not like here because we've got the time, but you've got 5 minutes, and you've got 5 minutes on a major market radio station. You want to make sure you spend it wisely. Right. So you would have one key message that has to get across. If you don't get it across, you have unfortunately failed. Think of it in those terms. I must get this across. Have a couple of secondary points that when there's time and availability, you do it. But that main key message, you learn to repeat it at least 3 is better, right. 3 different ways. Coming at it from 3 different ways. Then the reporter, the audience, whoever's listening, is more likely to get it.
Well, it makes it easier for them to then turn around and share your message.
Yes.
With others.
That's an excellent point.
And I love that, we were just talking about overwhelm. Our potential clients are in overwhelm too. So when you stand out as that quiet voice with one message, it drops away a lot of that overwhelm.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be in the media. It's you speaking to the local chamber of commerce, and right. You've got all these potential clients out there. The more they can hear the clarity in what you're saying, the more they're going to realize that you know what you're talking about, trust you.
Good point.
Feel they can talk to you. And I love your point about, especially in these days when we talk about social media, and we want our message to go viral. Well, yeah. Viral messages have to be simple. I think of that old Norman Rockwell painting, the secret, or I forget what it was called, but one person tells the next person tells the next person. You play that game sometimes, right? And it comes back to you going, what the heck was that? The simpler your message, the more likely it's going to get passed on from person to person clearly and accurately. And there's no better kind of feedback, as you know, than to get students coming back and you listen to them and you go, did I say that? I don't recall. Well, maybe I wasn't clear enough, but you know, or bang on. That's exactly what I said. Thank you. I'm glad you got it.
Excellent point. I'm taken back to the beginning of this conversation when we talked about the generation that's coming up and how tech savvy they are. It's interesting that they interact very differently with marketing and media than people did, a couple generations ago.
Very much.
They're not led as much by marketing. They're more influenced by the content.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a very interesting point.
And that's that whole issue of, if you can target on your pages, on your web pages, in your media messages, in your mailing list, how you split out your mailing list, if you can get the right message to the right person, they appreciate it. They're more likely to act on it. You're not wasting their time. We all hate getting messages that are, I keep getting the genie bra. The genie bra. Okay, by now somebody must have realized that George at, why are you still sending this to me? Be a responsible spammer, please. Right?
Be a responsible spammer.
It makes it doubly annoying. Okay, Ford is sending, there's a lot of Ford messages out right now. Well, I do need a car. So at least it's down, but it's something relevant. But the more you can, and I think you're right. I think especially the younger generations are more savvy about this. And they are getting all these messages, and so they don't want to be overwhelmed. They want,
Right.
send me the message for me.
Right.
And then I'll listen. They're not averse to it. I think sometimes people think, oh, they're savvy to advertising, so you can't reach them. No, they're savvy about what's reaching them. So send them the right message, and they'll be a great audience for you.
That's an excellent point. I love how you kind of zero in on, get your key message down right and get it clear, and then everything else is really just the tools to get it out there.
Exactly. And that's the biggest point. You were asking me when we chatted earlier about sort of what are some of the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to websites. And that's actually the number one mistake, is not having a clear idea of what they want the site itself or individual pages to do. And if you don't have that clear in your mind, you're going to throw on gizmos, because somebody said this is a cool gizmo, throw it on your site. Whoa.
Right.
Does it help your site? Is it useful to your visitors? Does it work for what you're doing? Well, if you don't know what you're doing, then boom, you're just going to try everything and anything. And that focus, before you go into it, before you spend money on design, before you spend money on anything, have a clear picture. You may change things later. Obviously, we have to be open to change. Which, by the way, one other quick message for I'm actually doing a talk next week on top strategies for 2012.
Oh, great.
One of the number one things to get into our heads, again, because it's doable nowadays, is testing. Okay? People have probably heard of split testing, A/B split testing.
Right.
So you got 2,000 subscribers, you send 1,000 this message, 1,000 this message. See which one works better. Now, again, 5 years ago, that was expensive and costly to do. Now, it's as easy as pie. You can do it on MailChimp, which is a free one. Free up to 2,000 subscribers, for example.
Oh, really? Good point.
The great one. So, yeah, you can get out there and test. So don't just sit there and hope your website's doing all right. Watch your analytics. See which pages they're going to. Try different pages. Try different wording. When you've got your newsletter sign-up form, try a different graphic. You can do A/B testing with Google nowadays that will literally serve a different graphic to some people, a different graphic to other people. And it'll tell you which one did they click on.
Isn't that an interesting point? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's easy for the average person to do now, which is we need to be not complacent about anything.
That's a great point. I wanted to make sure that we mentioned that you actually have a special offer just for our listeners.
I do, yes. I wanted to find something that would be really helpful and cost-effective for everybody. So what I'm doing is I'm offering 15 minutes of phone call or Skype. I'll get on the line with you. You've already sent your URL, and I'll get on the line with you and talk about what I like about your site, what I think could be improved, where you could go with it. So a quick 15-minute state of the site, state of the website.
State of the site.
Yeah, that's right. Where are we? Where are you at? And for just $5. And it's just literally, I just want to get out there and get people thinking about these things. And I thought, well, this is a quick way, inexpensive way for them to try it out. And it's a test drive, let's be honest. It's a test drive of me too, kick my tires. So there you go.
That's a brilliant point. I want to make sure our listeners really understand the value here of having a professional on the line looking at your stuff one-on-one and talking to you. I have my little WordPress guy that helps me with all the technical stuff, and I call him my expert in my pocket.
Yes.
And
Good.
that's exactly what you're offering here, is to have an expert in the pocket there to look right at your website. Yes. People can find that at seehow2.com/solo. And the see how is SEE how, HOW, and 2, TWO. So it's all the words, no letters or numbers. Well, letters to make up the words, but,
but I
you know what I'm saying.
I have the 2 there because all my videos are under 2 minutes on that site.
Oh,
It's
good point.
It's a help
It's
site.
fast.
I hate long videos where I can't find what I need, so I just did short videos. Anyway, yes, seehowto.com/solo. And yeah, just for your listeners, because I really think the individual solo professional out there could use a virtual consultant on their side. And
yes.
Maybe I can help.
Definitely. I would like to, how long will this be available? I'd love to put this in our newsletter that goes out next week.
Sure. No, I can keep that up there for as long as you need it. So go.
Wonderful.
I'll just leave it up.
We'll get that out there then. We do the Solo Pro News, so I think a lot of our readers would also be really interested.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Barbara. That's wonderful.
Excellent.
And you know what? We didn't get back onto Star Trek. We were very restrained.
Darn.
We wanted to talk. We'll
do that offline.
We'll do that. Exactly. Which is better, Picard or anyway, we won't get into that.
I gotta say, I like Picard.
I like Picard too. I think anyway. Well, we won't go into that. Too many open doors there. There you go. I love it.
Oh, that is too funny. Too funny.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a great fun.
You are Kick. We're going to have you back. I mentioned when we talked earlier, is that I love that you also do some presentation coaching.
Yes. Yeah.
I think is essential for solo pros to they get their key message down there, but then somebody's got to help them, get that out to the world and present it properly.
You know what's cool about that is we can do a lot on radio with that, because I'll tell you, one of my number one presentations I do is about vocal variety.
Oh.
And how important that is in your presentation. You can talk about hand movements and body gestures and all these things. I mean, aside from content, we're assuming you've got good content. Aside from that, your voice is really one of your biggest tools. So we could talk a lot about that and presentation. Sure, that'd be fun.
That would be fun. Turn us all into James Earl Joneses.
There you go. Or Patrick Stewart's. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Just please not William Shatner.
Not William Shatner. We don't need to do Priceline commercials. But what was the one that Patrick Stewart did? He did some commercials and you just listen to that voice and you go, wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's because that's what you want to do, is you want to draw people in. You want to lead them with your voice. And that's what these actors do so wonderfully. It's
definitely
amazing.
We are going to have to chat again soon.
There you go. We'll chat some more.
You're a Kick. Thank you so much for being with me today. This has been so much fun.
Thank you. It's been great.
Yeah, we're going to have to do this again. I want to invite our listeners to join us tomorrow for our Friday free-for-all, where we have all of our business experts online of Solo Pro Radio, plus Susan Rich from Susan Rich Talk is going to join us, and we're going to talk about why do people have a hard time promoting themselves. So it's going to be a fun time. Call in and join us, George.
That sounds good. And that's a very important topic.
For solos especially. Yeah, they get in their own way.
My wife is a publicist.
Oh.
She couldn't publicize herself out of a paper bag if she tried. So there you go. Yeah.
So true. It's so true. We get in our own way. It's all in our heads.
It is. Sounds good.